watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into The Sports Source. We have an abundance of topics to cover today. Football, basketball, Lady Vols, their name. We have never discussed that on this show. It started in football season. We've just kept rolling past it. It's back in the news this week. We'll discuss that. Lots of stuff to talk about. Let's go ahead and just roll right into this show. First segment, as always, brought to you by my good friend Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. That's a great team over there. As nasty as the weather has been this week, spring is just around the corner. And the time when houses get shown and sold is spring and summer. If you want to move your home or property, especially here in the area of Blount, Loudoun, West Knox counties, go with the team that has moved more than $350 million worth of property. In other words, Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land, they know how to sell your house. Give them a call if you want to move your property. Call them right now. Maybe they can get that thing moved by the time spring gets here. All right. Here's what we got coming up on the show. Vols take another tumble. They've dropped 2 this week, dropped the last-second heartbreaker last night at Ole Miss. We'll talk about the football departures from the roster. Butch Jones says it's kind of natural. Is it? We'll debate. Tourney Blues. Doesn't look like Tennessee, unless there's a miracle turnaround, doesn't look like the Vols will be turnifying this year in March. How big of an issue will that be on the recruiting front with already the Tyndall stuff hanging out there? Athlon this week ranked the coaching duos in the SEC. We'll take a look at that, and I'm going to ask these guys which duo, if they had to hire a duo together, which one they would hire from around the conference. As I mentioned, we'll discuss the Lady Vols' name and the soon lack thereof. SEC news. We'll talk about how the SEC's back in some NCAA hot water, but the league is bringing in more cash. We'll discuss that. And finally, hey, it's Oscar Sunday. We'll have a last-second question about UT Sports put in the form of kind of an Oscars theme. Stick around. It'll be pretty good. All right. These guys are here, and I pay them, so they have to stick around. We have Houston Fancher, former Vol staff member, also former head coach at Appalachian State for 9 years. We have Chuck Cavaleris, longtime writer here in the area, of course now with Southern Golf Central?
Exactly.
Southern Golf Central. And then next to you, Mark Pankratz, former D1 basketball player. I'm not even going to say Milwaukee this week, so I'll throw it out. Former Vol staff member under Bruce Pearl and Conzo Martin.
Thanks. I'm back in Milwaukee with this weather.
That's right. You're used to it. And Mark and Houston do a podcast every week on, it's called The Coach's Corner. You can find it at sportsradiownml.com. Look for it. All right. Gentlemen, Tennessee hung with Kentucky for a half before their shooting touch disappeared in the second half. They got blown out. Last night at Oxford, Tennessee started out cold, had a nearly 10-minute streak where they didn't hit anything. Somehow managed to have the lead at the half, rebounded well, fought right down to the wire, missed a last-second shot from Josh Richardson. First question, let's just start with that last-second shot. Was Richardson right in taking it, or should he have passed that ball off?
Well, I think you can see both sides of it. I think all day, every day, Josh takes that shot. Now, you're on the road. You think, I want to try to win a basketball game with that last shot. Kevin Punter was standing wide open. But you got the ball in the hands of your best player who's carried you all season long. And I don't think Josh turns that shot down at any point in time in his career. I don't think he does now because the weight of the world is on his shoulders. He feels like he's got to make that one. If he passes it and somebody doesn't make it, they want to know why he didn't take it. So there's arguments on both sides of the floor there. But if I'm Josh, he's thinking score. I would like for him to attack the goal a little bit, John, and maybe get to the foul line if he could. But at the same time, I still think he takes that shot.
And the way it rimmed out made it like the real heartbreaker, too. I mean, it looked like it was in.
It looked a lot like the last-second shot from Hubbs at Arkansas.
I know.
Yeah. Circled the drain and came back out.
You know, if you could do it over again, maybe you do look to make the quick pass, but the clock is ticking, and the clock in your head is always faster than the real clock. I would have liked to have seen him try and draw some contact. You had the defender in the air to your left. You could have leaned in and maybe been able to pull off a three-point play for the win.
Well, I think if it's another player shooting that pull-up jump shot, it's even more questionable. But that pull-up jump shot's Josh's go-to shot. You know, that's a layup for him. And the other thing about Punter, he had made 4 3-pointers in the game, so it made it a little more of a questionable shot. But anytime I can put my best player, in an opportunity to knock down that shot, I'd take it all day, every day.
Well, and that's 3 times this year that Tennessee has had a last-second shot. I had remembered, obviously last night, I can barely remember that. But remember the Arkansas game that Donnie Tyndall drew up the great play to Hubbs, didn't get in there. But Richardson also missed a last-second shot at Georgia. So this team really 3 shots away from having a lot better record than it does right now. let's talk about shooting as a whole. Tennessee, going into yesterday, one of 5 teams in the Southeastern Conference shooting less than 43%. Those 5 teams in conference play are combined 20 and 50. We talk about lack of depth. We talk about lack of height. All those things could help shooting. But the bottom line is you could have a deep team that's filled with height. If you're not shooting the ball, you're not going to win. We can look at all these other angles and issues that Donnie Tyndall's having to fight through, but you just don't have a wealth of scorers, and we went into the season knowing that.
You're right, and you don't have a guy who can get people shots either. I mean, Josh is not a creator. He's a guy that distributes at times, but for the most part, people have to create their shots, or the offense has to create their shots. So I don't think you have somebody who can get guys shots, and we don't have a great amount of shooters, but nationally, I think shooting's gone down nationally if you look at the stats and numbers nationally. But we certainly, it's where we've struggled to score. We've defended well enough, John, to be in all these basketball games. We just hadn't scored the ball well enough.
And Tennessee's actually got, of those 5 teams, it's Mississippi State, Missouri, Auburn, and South Carolina are the other 5. Tennessee has the best record of those 5 inside the league, but still, even though shooting has dropped everywhere, when you're down that low in the league, you're going to have a hard time winning games. Mark.
Well, and besides the shooting fact, because you don't have a post player, you don't have, like Fancher said, a guy that can break down and go get easy baskets. Sometimes if a team has a dominant post player, guys that can go one-on-one, they can win more games. I remember the Kentucky teams of old, they would still win a ton of basketball games, but they struggled to win a national championship until Cal started recruiting some guys that could shoot the basketball. Because defensively as a coach, you can game plan and just shrink the court and guard the paint and just force guys to shoot contested jump shots, and they're not going to win consistently. So shooting is a big Achilles heel for a lot of teams throughout the country.
Yeah, with a low shooting percentage, I always go back and look at how many easy buckets are you getting? Are you getting enough out of your fast break? Are you able to do things where you get some dunks, where you're not really having enough post players inside? You had one like lob over the top that was a good outcome, but you're just not really getting enough easy baskets to help that shooting percentage.
You can go back just as recently as the Bruce Pearl years. He had, after Lofton and Smith left, there was not a wealth of shooters on that team. Yeah. But they still got a decent percentage because they got so many junk baskets. Right. At least a couple of those years in the middle before it really kind of slowed down for him those last 2 years when he recruited a different type of athlete.
Well, and if you can't score consistently, that's when offensive rebounds the second half or turnovers the second half last night. That's where the little things become even much bigger because you just don't have that wiggle room. You don't have that room for error.
And you mentioned the punter 3-pointers, 4? It seems like every game he makes one really bonehead pass that goes the other way for a dunk. Yesterday it was like a half bounce pass to Hubbs in the corner that bounced off his shin. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to clean that up too, because to me that's like a 5-point swing. Every time you do that, those unforced errors are really what, to me, that's even bigger than Josh Richardson missing the shot at the end.
Let me throw you one, Chuck, an admitted fan of Tennessee. I'll ask the fan question here, right? Tennessee started out 12-5. I think everybody got excited with Donnie Tyndall. Wow, how is he doing this with this team? The competition's gone up over the last few weeks, but they've now dropped 7 of their last 9 games. I don't think anyone really – there's never been a rush to support this team because I think a lot of people are waiting to see what happens with Tyndall. That said, fan-wise, does the fact that they've now lost 7 of 9 start to equal out the Donnie Tyndall thing at all, or do you still look at him and say, no, this guy's clearly a coach?
No, this guy's clearly a coach. And look at, as Houston has pointed out, look at how many of those games you're in right down to the last possession.
You got 3 last-second shots that if you make.
If you were getting blown out, if your players were laying down, but this team has shown from the start that they'll compete. And to me, it's an easy team to pull for because they're so challenged in so many areas.
Well, you're 14-12 right now. If you hit those 3 last-second shots, you're 17-9, and we're talking about NCAA tournament bids possibly.
Well, the difference between having a great season and an average season are the close games. Yeah. We've not won those close games. You take a look at Kentucky, who's had some close games, having a great season. That goes across the board nationally. You win the close games, you end up with a great season.
All right, guys. When we come back, Butch Jones said this week that the roster attrition that we're seeing so much of since the start of the season, it's a byproduct of large signing classes. Is that true? We'll discuss it. Come on back on the Sports Source.
Decks, dens, homes. Turn to Benedict Construction.